All right, so today we're going to look at the PA-30 twin Comanche fuel system. We're looking at the model that has the tip tanks installed. So we have main tanks, an auxiliary tank, and then a tip tank. So here's our main tanks, here's our auxiliary tank, and here's our tip tank on the left-hand side, and you have the same thing on the right. Now I'm going to use different colors here to show the flow of fuel. And let's kind of look at a couple things here before we get started. The main thing that I want to show in this video is how to determine which selector to move to the crossfeed position if you lose an engine. More than likely, the number one reason why you're going to lose an engine is because of fuel starvation. So in this scenario, we're going to assume that we have lost the left engine because of fuel starvation. So all of these tanks are empty. They have no fuel in them. That's our assumption in this scenario. So we need to take fuel from the right tanks and send it to the left engine. So we'll indicate our right tanks in blue here. And we need to get this fuel over to our left engine here. Now, in this scenario, the selector on the right tank is already on the either the auxiliary tank or the tip tank, because these are connected by a solenoid valve. So depending on where you have that selector switch, which I'll show you a picture of, it's either taking fuel from the auxiliary or the tip tank, but that's kind of irrelevant in this scenario. But just understand that right now we're taking, let's just assume, fuel from the auxiliary tank. So let's show our fuel flow from that right auxiliary tank. As we follow the arrows, it's going to come down and through the fuel selector, which we have selected here on the auxiliary tank, and it's going to go down through the fuel strainer to the right engine, through the electric fuel pump, through the engine-driven fuel pump, and then to the right engine. Now, how do we get fuel from the right tank to the left engine? The fuel selector in this scenario on the left side is also in the same position as on the right. It's saying take fuel from, go back to yellow here, it's saying take fuel from the auxiliary tank on the left. But we don't have fuel in the auxiliary tank on the left. We have no fuel on this side at all. So notice the direction that the arrows are pointing. Wherever the fuel selector is pointing, it's saying take fuel from that line, because fuel is flowing in this direction. So if I move this selector switch to this position and say take it from the main, it's going to take fuel flowing from the main through this selector switch down through the fuel strainer and send it to the engine. But like I said, we don't have any fuel in those tanks. So how do we get it to crossfeed? Well, you'll notice one other position here to the right. Let me draw this in a different color so you can see it. You have one other position to the right. That is your crossfeed. Notice that the arrows are dashed on this line in between these two red lines here. And you can see the legend on the right-hand side. Dashed arrow means crossfeed fuel flow. So if we move this selector switch to the right, let me draw that in gray. White this out here. And we'll move our selector switch to the right, indicating that we are now on the crossfeed position. It's saying take fuel from the crossfeed line from the right engine. So let's follow this back in red. So we'll follow this back just like this, and notice where it ends up. It ends up going to the right fuel selector. So it's still going to take whatever fuel is being drawn from whatever tank on the right side, whether that's the auxiliary or the right main. But the fuel flow is now going to go both to the right engine in blue that we already drew, but it's also going to go through this red course, through the crossfeed fuel flow to the left engine. And then we'll follow this in red to indicate the crossfeed down through the fuel strainer to the left engine. through the electric fuel pump, through the engine-driven fuel pump, and down to the left engine. So don't make this any more complicated than it needs to be. Dead engine, dead crossfeed. So if you lose your left engine, let's say you starve all of the fuel out of the left tanks, then that is the fuel selector that you need to move to the crossfeed position, because it's telling you take fuel from the other side of the airplane. Don't overcomplicate it. So just remember, dead engine, dead crossfeed. The rest of this is pretty self-explanatory, what you're used to with an Archer or a Warrior, where it's, although it's not carbureted, it is fuel injected. So you're sending the fuel directly to the cylinder heads. But all the rest of this is pretty similar. Not too complicated. That's just the main thing that people get confused when it comes to cross-feeding an engine. So just remember, like I said, dead engine, dead cross-feed on the fuel selector switch.